What's up? It's Coach Ryan Razooky with I Love Basketball TV, and today we are talking about hand placement and your lift path while shooting. So oftentimes I see players who struggle to shoot the ball correctly. It's usually because of their hand placement first, and that's going to start to fix all of the other issues that we have with our shot. Now, of course, I understand that not everybody is going to shoot the same way, but if we can try to get as close as possible to perfect symmetrical mechanics that will allow us to shoot the ball in a straight line and have the least amount of movements, that's going to be the most beneficial thing for us. And I understand that not everybody's going to shoot exactly the same, but we do want to key in and focus on certain principles for shooting. So if we take a look at the basketball, an easy way to find just the middle here is going to be the air pump, right? Where we pump the basketball here, where we put the needle in. Now what I want to do is either put my index finger here, split it, or some players will put their middle. I'm not opposed to either. My personal preference is to split it right there. Now, I'm going to take my left hand and just put it directly on the side. A couple things we want to avoid here is we don't want our shooting hand in front of the ball, and we definitely don't want our shooting hand on the side of the ball. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But ideally, we'd like to have our wrist right here with our hand on top or behind the basketball. Those two things will allow us to bring the ball up, shoot it, without having to have an extra rotation there or an extra rotation there with our shooting hand. Next, if we can get our guide hand on the side here, that's going to keep it balanced and allow us to release the ball to the rim without having any interference. I don't want these hands too close together, and I don't want them on opposite sides of the basketball. I would love if you could have one hand here on top / behind and one hand here on the side. That's going to be the most ideal way to bring the ball up and shoot it with the least amount of movements in a completely straight line. So one of the common issues with our hand placement is a lot of players will take their shooting hand and have it face the side or diagonal here. And by doing this is going to hurt our shot path and our line and our release to the basket. So ideally, as much as you can have your fingers facing forward towards the basket, now we can bring that ball up perfectly to again release it, snapping down, and get good backspin on the ball. This is going to help our rotation, and this is going to help that ball have nice and perfect arc to the rim, not going flat and not pushing it up too high. So shooting hand right here, that's going to be number one, fingers facing the basket. Make sure we're locked and loaded, not having the hand on top of the ball. Those are going to be a couple of key points to look at there, and I understand if you're going to need to slide it just a little bit to the side. Some players have some tension in their forearm, and they can't really get that ball or their elbow and the wrist in line here. So I'm not opposed if you want to be or you need to be just a little bit to the side. But again, just try to keep it as straight as possible. So for our left hand, obviously the most common mistake is players thumbing the ball, pushing it, and some people will tell you that it's not a mistake and it's okay to do it. I will tell you that the least movements you can have in your shot, the better. So you don't necessarily want it, and I would never necessarily teach it, but it's okay if you have it, and I'm not going to tell players with a really, really good shot to get rid of it. But if you could just keep that hand flat, that's the way that should be taught, and that's the way that you would, of course, ideally like to have it done. So for this hand, just having it here on the side is going to be huge. And you can see that my wrist is pointed down, right? And a lot of players will turn that wrist to point to the rim. And once you turn that wrist and point it to the rim, now you're pushing the ball and shoving it with two hands instead of just keeping it there on the side to guide the ball, keep it balanced, and allow it to go straight to the rim. So from here, one of the easiest ways that we can kind of fix those things is to take this index finger and take the thumb completely off the ball. And now, with just 3 fingers on it, it's going to allow you to release straight and easily without having those force from these fingers pushing it, if that's an issue with your shot. So now just talking about the lift path and how we want to ideally bring up the ball. If we can have that ball coming up in a straight line, it's going to allow our elbow, our wrist, all these things to be underneath the ball and have it coming up in a straight, perfect path. Now, releasing it, I can allow that elbow to push up through and allow the wrist to snap down. Sometimes as players bring the ball from the side here, what happens is the elbow's out, which again isn't the biggest issue in the world, but now if you look at my wrist, when I push, it flicks in the wrong direction. This is hurting our arc, and this is also hurting our spin, and oftentimes you're going to have to push the ball with the other hand to try to help to balance out the two wrong things that I'm doing, which is going to be hard to be consistent with. So if I can have this straight and then release, that's going to be easy on my wrist and allow that ball to rotate perfectly and get good arc going into the hoop. So Starting the ball here above my right knee, I can now have it in a perfect line where I have wrist, elbow, shoulder, bring it up right here and straight. I don't want that ball to travel in a circle, and I don't want that ball to travel on the left side of my face. And so like I mentioned earlier, with players with that tension in their forearm, they might have to hold the ball a little bit to the side here, right? And have the left hand here on this side. Not perfect, but still not bad. Bringing that ball up to the middle of the face isn't terribly wrong, as long as I can get my shooting hand underneath the ball. So you can see that my elbow's out, but my shooting hand is under the ball here, and I can still release it in that straight line. So those are the two ways that you're gonna wanna bring that ball up, just as long as it's coming up straight and not coming up in any circular motions or coming up from the outside of my frame.
Go dummy, go beast, oh no. I go beast, go deep, I OD, oh no.